Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Elevation Association Experience Podcast. We are your hosts, Dr. Jared Hill, Dr. Dan Nelson. Thanks again for joining us. Okay, Jared, this is a hot topic today for a lot of people, and I know we were talking before the recording that you haven't had to deal with this a whole lot, which is lucky. But be kind of rare, and that is micromanagement in dentistry.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe I haven't dealt with it because maybe I've been a micromanager in the past and maybe I've been a problem and didn't know it, right? I'm that guy. I don't know.
Busy micromanaging people to notice that you're micromanaging people.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I can attest that Jared is quite like far away not a micromanager. If anything, he can't stand that kind of stuff. And as I've watched him interact with, sometimes we've had some micromanagers in our way. I do want to talk about one specifically that about 25 years ago I worked. Well, I won't say where I worked. I won't incriminate the guilty, but I worked for a guy, and he had to have his hands in anything. And the ironic part of it is he was a horrible communicator. He couldn't convey what he wanted done. And so he would just say, go do this thing, and give you no direction whatsoever in what you were to accomplish. And so I remember one time specifically, there was one job that we had to do. It's a fairly artistic job. We were creating a fake wall for a big project. And it was made out of styrofoam. And we had to make these rocks. Well, he's like, go make that wall. And that was all the direction we got. So there was a team of 3 of us making this thing. And we had to carve it. And so we got it. The one guy that was just like this I don't even know what he did there. It was this random guy. He's like, come over and you do it like this. And he kind of showed us how to do it. No help from the manager at all. He just was irritated that it wasn't done yet. And so we go and start doing it. And we did it exactly how we were shown by the old, plotter guy, whoever his job was. So he comes over about halfway. We're like halfway through this huge project, and he freaks out, and he grabs the tools, and he's like, "Oh, Dad, I don't want it looking like this," and he just starts going nuts, right? And he starts taking the tools and redoing everything. And again, no direction other than he doesn't like it is. And then after that, he would constantly come back and just literally take the tools from our hands and just start doing it. Never telling us what he wanted it to be like, never giving us the finished product, nothing. And he did that constantly with projects, either doing them himself or constantly watching over you and correcting, not correcting you and giving you guidance, but literally correcting the job. And I think that that's something that everybody on some level has had somebody that they've, either worked with or worked for that's done that kind of stuff. It drives you crazy.
Yeah, no, the reason why this is so important for us and why we're talking about it today is because that type of leadership that Dan just described, that's not a leadership style, right? Leadership is one of our 3 pillars at Elevation Association. We talk about your life, we talk about leadership, we talk about your legacy. And the reason why we focus so much on leadership and the different styles of leadership is because this type of leadership that Dan's talking about is micromanaging, that burns you out faster than anything else. So, that's one of the greatest causes of burnout in dentistry is not understanding your leadership style and a good leadership style, and turns into micromanaging. And it's very dangerous. It kills initiative. Like you're saying, You do all this work, you start doing it, they come in and say you're doing it wrong. What are you going to do on the next project now, right?
Yeah.
It also will breed resentment. You're going to now, every time he tells you to do something or whatever, and it also, it's going to burn you out as a leader, right? You're carrying, every detail, while you're the team members completely disengaged from what's going on. So
totally.
Those are the dangers that we'd like to talk about and overcome. And I'm excited to hear, kind of your thoughts on Dan as you're with this, the psychology of it and so forth.
Yeah. So this is a little bit of a sneak preview for the Best for Dentistry Summit that I'm speaking at. I'm fascinated with, the psychology of what makes us do things or not do things. And this is something that I think is a big issue within a lot of offices, right? And so, um, specifically today, Jared, I think we should tackle the 7 hidden drivers behind micromanagement in dentistry. And like, so what I mean by that is, what's the psychology behind it? Like, why do people do the things they do? And then what are some things that we can do to combat that, right? And to your point, I think that was really poignant. If you're micromanaging others, that's not leadership at all. That's the opposite of leadership, right? So, but what's interesting about micromanagement is that people think it's about control, right? It's about somebody wants to control everything, and it's actually not. It's about unmet psychological needs. It's about outdated beliefs, or you just have a lack of systems within your office. So if you have somebody that's micromanaging, it's probably one of those things or all of those things. But a lot of this can be managed with the integration of systems. So, I want to jump into this and just get after it and start talking about some of these things. And you, Jared, you're probably tired of hearing me say this, but I really think that there are 4 barriers to success, and that's arrogance, ignorance, ambivalence, fear. Right? Fear is a huge one, and it's actually the first driver behind micromanagement, and it's fear of failure, which is legit. I mean, that's, you go into dental school and if you're the dentist owner, you go into dental school, you come out, you're $500,000 in debt already. You got to buy the practice. You got all this pressure on you. So fear of failure, that's a legit thing, right? So, I mean, you've probably witnessed that, Jared, on with different EA clients and maybe in your own life. Like, how have you seen that manifest? What do you see?
There's a lot of pressure for dentists, especially now. I feel bad for these dentists coming out of school now with so much debt, $400,000 or $500,000 plus in debt, plus a high interest rate. I mean, fear of failure is a legitimate fear, and if you fail, you lose potentially everything. Some of this double checking everything, redoing staff work. That may be because you can't afford to fail. You could say it that way too, right? The ironic thing is when you do that, you actually become the single point of failure because you're exhausting yourself. You can only do that for so long, and you're disempowering the rest of your team.
Yeah.
You're trying so hard to not fail, so you start to micromanage every little thing. But in the short term, in the moment, maybe that helps. In the long term, it's going to kill you, and that's hard to see.
Yeah, and I think you kind of touched on. I was just thinking as you were saying that of in The Incredibles, the second one, right? At the end of the first one, there's the underminer. That is a thread across all 7 of these drivers. Is the result is people feeling undermined. Nobody freaking likes to be undermined, right? It's so, it makes you feel small. It makes you feel inadequate. It makes you feel, unappreciated, all these negative feelings and emotions. And then already, let's be honest, dental offices are already running at level 11 on emotion anyway. So to throw in more is not a good idea.
Yeah.
So fear of failure. The second one's kind of one that once I say it, I think everyone will be like, oh yeah, duh, of course. And it's insecurity, right? Like, that manifests, through, it looks like a lack of trust, right? So if you have insecurities, did you ever play tag or capture the flag, Jared? And we used to call it puppy dogging the goal, or I don't know why we called it that, but it was where you wouldn't get away from your thing, your precious,
Yeah.
Well, insecurities are the same way. You puppy dog those insecurities and you protect those insecurities in a way. And typically they result in a lashing out of some type, and it's someone this like, well, why did the boss just go off? Or why did my office manager just freaking lose it, right?
Yeah.
And the other way that it manifests is that people won't delegate, and they'll constantly hover over somebody because they're like, oh, this is going to reflect poorly on me, how does this make me look, or what is, whatever. If it touches on one of those insecurities, that's always a sore spot and a hot button. And I think this is something that people can relate to, whether you're talking about micromanagement or not. Insecurities in general, that's a whole different podcast for a whole different team. But it is an issue.
You know what I think is interesting about this part, Dan, is it's not just about necessarily your team members, like your assistant or front office, but think about a dentist who hires an associate. You're micromanaging that associate. You have to find that balance. You have to toe the line between micromanaging and empowering and letting them do things, because you have to realize they're going to make mistakes, as long as they're willing to be coached and so forth, and as long as you're not hovering over them with every little thing, you're trusting them, but not allowing them to do damage to the patients of the practice. And I think that may be the hardest part about having an associate like right out of school is, maybe you're hiding behind the fact of, it's in the best interest of the staff or the patients, but is it really your own maybe insecurity as a dentist as well? So that's why this is a kind of a very hard topic, to be completely honest with yourself.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's thanks for saying that, because if you're not honest with yourself to begin with, none of these matter. These 7, drivers, these hidden drivers, if you shove your head in the sand and aren't willing to admit that you've got, maybe some of these things fall on you, then you're not going to fix anything, and it's going to continue to undermine your practice.
Yeah.
And that brings me to the third one, which is, I'm guilty of this, and I combat it a lot, and it's perfectionism. And it used to drive my my instructors in residency crazy, because I would sit and these poor patients, I would sit and, like, with a class 1 amalgam or something like that, I would sit and it always had to be just right, and they would be like, dude, it is good. It's good. Like, and they would tell me, like, good enough doesn't mean bad. They're like, it's is good enough. Like, this is it, it's awesome. You just need to walk away.
Yeah.
But I was a bottleneck. I created my own bottleneck to this. And if things weren't just right, it drove me crazy. And the way that can manifest in micromanagement is that you are now plugging everything up. Nothing gets done because you're maybe blocking your own schedule. And maybe it's not even perfectionism within the work. Maybe it's the way, the management style. You're not allowing people to progress because everything is stuck. And now you block the whole, progression of the office, because maybe it is an appointment. Oh, that'll take off the front desk, right? And your assistants.
Yeah, well, where I see this play out in our office sometimes, and just, Dan and I are guilty of all these things to a certain degree at some point in time, and it's all about becoming better and recognizing it is the micromanagement does create bottlenecks. So we're talking like this perfection creates bottlenecks, and sometimes as an owner of the practice, you feel like you have to have input on every aspect of what's going on, even if I'm not micromanaging, but I have to give my input on everything. You're the one that now is solving the problems, even though maybe you allow them to solve the problems they constantly you for. Is that okay? That's maybe a sign of micromanaging rather than allowing them to solve the problems on their own, and you don't have to give constant input to every single little thing.
Yeah, you don't have to touch everything in it. And I think that on the flip side of perfectionism is to go back to fear, right? It's that fear of failure, and they work together, but also just like the fear that it's not going to be good enough. If I don't get my hands in this and it's not going to be to the quality level that I expect. We've seen that, right? Like, we've seen that happen with some docs that just insist that if they don't have their hands in every single thing, then it's not going to be to the level of care or quality that they expect. There's a total lack of trust on their team, and they think that they've got to have their hands in all of it, otherwise it won't. Or maybe it's a pride thing. I talked about arrogance being a block too, where it's like, look, if I'm not involved, it's not going to be good. That's dangerous. So yeah, a couple of not good thought process there.
And the problem with that is that as a dentist, it keeps you stuck working in your practice, not on your practice. So
Yeah.
it prevents strategic growth because you're mired down in these nuances of the running the everyday bits of the practice. And next thing you know, it's 10 years later and you haven't focused on strategic growth. And that's one of the major issues of micromanaging, and this perfectionism, this insecurity, this fear of failure. All these things lead to that.
Yeah, I'm thinking specifically when you said that, Jared, of an office that we worked with, that he would not allow his office to progress because he was constantly putting his hands in every little thing because he was so sure he wanted he wanted things to be a certain way. And again, I didn't communicate it well, and the team didn't really know what he wanted. And so he was sure that his team was inept and he just had to do it all his way. And to do it his way, he had to be touching every little thing, and the office didn't progress. Yeah, that's a great.
That's tough. This next one I think is super interesting, Dan. The fourth one, which is your self-worth is tied to the results. To talk about that a little bit. What are your thoughts on that one, Dan?
Well, it's very similar, right? So if you look at your insecurities, these are all driven by different, these drivers have an impetus behind them. Self-worth, again, if you have some weird insecurities, or if you only base your value on what your outcome is at work, that's super dangerous, and society has pushed us in that direction, because how are we valued as being successful? We've talked about this on other podcasts, right? So you're valued at being successful by society by the house you live in, the car you drive. In other words, how much money are you making? Right? It doesn't have, people don't look and say, well, how many hours did you work this week? They don't look and say, how's your quality of life? None of that is measured, especially in the day and age of social media. None of that is measured. What we measure things by is what we can see. And a lot of times that's people that are leveraged in debt. It's all a facade. It's very dangerous to be measuring your self-worth based on what kind of result you get. Right. And what I mean by that is, how are you measuring it? So what this leads somebody to do is, again, it's going to tap into, I care a lot about what other people think. I base my own self-worth, or I base my own self-worth based on what it looks like I'm doing. And so again, you start to get involved with every little thing because you're driven by, maybe it's arrogance, maybe it's fear, maybe it's a combo goal, maybe it taps into your insecurities. And so now, if you feel like you've taken, or the flip side of this, Jared, is if you feel like you're taken out of a situation, like if you've delegated something away, now all of a sudden you're like freaked out that like, oh, well, I'm not even needed anymore. They don't. It's, well, some people are like, thank goodness, it's about time, which is a healthy thing to be able to delegate and say, all right, I've done a good leadership job of empowering my team. How? I'm not needed for this. That's the goal. Someone else that's struggling with micromanagement is going to go, oh no, like I've become obsolete in this. They're freaked out. And I was like, I'm not as valuable as I was before. My worth has gone down. It sounds kind of crazy, but it happens a lot.
You have people have this inherent need to be needed.
Yep.
So they need me to do this, and if that need is gone, if you've created a system that allows that to run without you and solve problems without you, some people feel like they lose their value, and that's what that is. That's tying your self-worth to the result of that system, and that's sometimes hard to distinguish from, right?
Oh, it's super hard to divorce. But it's, when you talk about self-worth, like, I don't want to get, again, I do love psychology, and I could take us down a nasty rabbit hole right here, but your self-worth shouldn't be tied to simply the results you have. It shouldn't be based solely on like, oh my gosh, that feeling was amazing. I'm amazing. You see what I'm saying? Like that kind of thing that's a dangerous line of thought. That's disregarding the intrinsic self-worth that people have outright. That's disregarding all of the complexities of a human being. But in our own, minds, we can find that we just are only as good at, what's that saying in racing? There's a phrase that you're only as good as your last race, which is a terrible thing to say, but it kind of paints the picture of what society pushes on people, and we start to adopt that. And I think it's especially dangerous now with social media. Like I said, the younger group that's coming up and practicing, watch out for this, because this is a legit thing. Because if you say you're an associate, uh, they will try to tie your value or your worth to what you're accomplishing. How much did you produce? You know, what work did you get done? And it's all going to be tied to a number, which is dangerous. Like that in and of itself is really dangerous. So this is a huge one to watch out for, because it can breed, like you were saying, it can start to breed these habits that are unhealthy and create a lack of trust. It creates these things where you, again, begin to undermine things. You want to have your hands in everything. It ties you up. Really unhealthy habits form from this driver.
Yeah.
So our fifth one, and this one is, I could talk about this all day long, and it's cognitive disorders. And this is all or nothing or catastrophic thinking, right? So you can see this a lot, and there's a lot of cognitive disorders. And I'm not talking about the pathological ones that you need to seek clinical therapy for. I'm talking about the type that, everybody's worked with a catastrophizer. Everybody has, whether it's you or you've worked with somebody and some people function well under that guise. They actually will they frame their thought processes that way because it motivates them and it gets them to do things. The best way to see that is there's different style of test takers or studiers. They did this study with college students, and they found that there's different types of study habits. And one of them is the catastrophizer. And what they do is they freak out. They freak themselves out that if they don't start studying now, as soon as they know the test is coming, they're going to fail. They're going to fail. They study forever. These are typically your straight A students, right? These are the ones that get fantastic grades, but they literally tell themselves, if I don't study now, I'm going to fail. And it's like an all or nothing attitude. Well, we can see that again within. So if you were that study person, if that's your approach to studying, and that's what you did through school, probably should pause and go, okay, how is this affecting work, right? So what is it doing to the workspace? How is this affecting the people that I'm around? Because when you're studying, that only affects you. But when you put a team around you and you still have that mindset, it's going to bleed into what's happening with the other people around you. And typically you're working with someone that's a catastrophic thinker. It can be a bit exhausting because they are intense. They're a bit reactive. And it's all driven by this fear of, oh man, if they mess this up, it's the practice.
Yeah, I see this, like you just said, if I mess this up or if they mess this up, right, it could destroy the practice. That, to me, that leads to the micromanagement that stifles innovation, right? Because you're always looking for the correct answer. You're looking for what is the absolute right way that I should be doing this, right? So your team stops offering ideas and solutions because you're going to override them. Oh, that doesn't work. And so you're now kind of stuck into this one all or nothing pathway. Like it's got to be this way or nothing, which as I think we were all probably stuck in that to a certain degree in our practices. It wasn't until we branched out and we're like, oh, you're doing it this way and that's working. Oh, you're doing it. And the more people we talk to, every office runs differently, like so different. Everybody builds out different. Everybody charges different. Everyone's process is a little bit different. There's a few underlying themes or systems across the board. But overall, if you're looking for this all or nothing, if I do it the wrong way, it's going to mess this whole thing up. You're going to totally stifle that innovation that comes from your office, and it's going to it's not going to allow you to be your unique office of how you and your team really function at the highest capacity.
I love what you said there because you just let us in. I don't know if you did that on purpose, Jerry, but you let us into the sixth one, and that's learned behavior. So this is just repeating habits, from previous bosses or training, which that actually could be a good thing, right? That's not always a bad thing. But if we're talking about micromanagement specifically, you have to take pause and go, wait a second, the thought process that goes with that is, oh, this is how I was trained. It worked for me. It seemed to work. Rather than like getting educated, learning, going and getting some business CE, getting some, management CE. It's just like, what it usually is, right? It's just picking up what the previous doc did. So if you like bought a practice or came in, or maybe you worked under somebody, and Jared, you and I were talking about this the other day, and you said something to me that I think will stick with me for the rest of my career. And it's, as we look at, not all dentists are created the same. Like some, we've all seen some, and if you're guilty of this, stop it. But if we've all seen some that do terrible work, and it's not just bad, but terrible. And, when I was asking you, I was like, why do you think that people think that that's okay? You said that, well, I think that the dentistry they learn when they first get out of school is the dentistry that they continue to practice through their whole career. And the habits that they form and when they're new is the habits that they take with them for their whole career. And and then you made exceptions. There's obviously people that can break that pattern, but for a lot of them, that is what happens. And it's this learned behavior. Well, that bleeds into management and leadership styles as well. So if they watch someone that were constantly micromanaging the team, they're like, well, this is how you do it. The way it's done.
Yeah. This is especially dangerous when you hire somebody from another office, or if you hire, your front office, office manager, for example. If you have an office manager, they're going to come in with ideas of how an office manager should work in an office, and they're going to push back and say this, but this is how we did it at the other office. And maybe you can take those ideas and you can work with them. But if that's the only way, then that's going to be a problem for the rest of the team as well. So,
yeah, that's a good point.
And so, we see this a lot of times when hygienists come in as well. Hygienists come in to work in your office. Well, this is not how Dr. So-and-so does it. And you're like, well, that's this is how I was trained. It worked for me. That's great. This is how we're going to do it here at the office. Or, that can be a driver behind mismanagement as well.
I'm thinking about, and I'm going to date myself here, I'm thinking about the movie with Michael Keaton. It's an old 80s movie called Mr. Mom.
Oh, yeah.
For when he takes over carpool duty and the kid in the back seat's like, you're doing it wrong. Like, I remember when I first came here, it was that exact thing. Like, it was, learned behavior from the team that was here, and my learned behavior came full steam ahead and just like, you're doing it wrong. Well, Dr. Hill doesn't do it this way. It was just like, it was this constant like, okay, we have these learned behaviors that are clashing. Not that you weren't micromanaged, but it was just kind of funny to illustrate, your point on that.
No,
which I think that is a nice segue into our last one, number 7, and that's a lack of systems. And for us at EA, this is probably like the biggest one, because here is the, for people that have, okay, so if you're a micromanager and you have some kind of control issues, right? You got like, I have control issues. A lack of systems, it's your kryptonite. This is the place where this can kill you. This will manifest these other 6 things quicker than anything else. And it's also the point where you can flip it on its head, create a series of systems that allow you to take a step back and power your team. And so you need to have, that's where for the people that, that are like, man, I have to have my hands in everything. I need to have the control. I feel like, this is my team's reflection of me. Okay, fine. You can accept them, embrace the stuff, and then create some clear protocols, set clear expectations for your team, and begin to empower your team through systems and protocols moving forward. That way, if you don't, your micromanager is going to fill all the voids. If you don't have protocols, you're going to see discrepancies, problems, and you're just going to go start trying to grab your fire extinguisher, just go put out everything, fire these,
Yeah, Gino Wickman describes this as the difference between a dictatorship and building a true leadership team, right? The true leadership team is going to multiply your capacity. It's going to give you more margin for growth, really rest, more margin for fulfillment, all of those things, right? And then when you don't have these things, when you're micromanaging, this patients can feel the tension when they can see when their assistant brings them back, they're all constantly looking over their shoulder, they're constantly questioning everything. Patients can feel that, and that causes some mistrust between the patient and the doctor as well. But when you've got this true leadership team, your practice then becomes scalable, right? It's no longer dependent upon your constant oversight, your constant presence. It's the most freeing thing that you can do. And by doing this also, you're going to start to attract the top talent, right? That the A players of the area are going to want to come and work for you. They're going to want to be part of the practice that grows leader, because at that point in time, as an owner, when you get rid of this micromanaging thing, you all of a sudden now you become the mentor instead of the micromanager. Right?
Yes.
You're creating this legacy by developing the people rather than oppressing them and keeping them down because of your own ego, is what it is. So, and practice then is going to become, platform, not a prison for these employees.
Oh, I like that. I'm going to quote that. That's going up on a presentation at some point.
Good.
A practice, not a prison. I one of my favorite moments of my EA experience was when we were hiking the Sawtooth Mountains, and we had brought Dr. Jason Campbell. He was participating on this one. He shout out to Jason. He practices down in Arizona. And as we were sitting around the proverbial campfire, Jason said, "My goal is to be able to have my practice run without me there." He said, "That's my ultimate goal, is that everything runs fine without me being there." And that sat with me and continues to sit with me as I think about what that means. What does that mean? The fact that if everything runs to the level I want it to my expectations, to the goals that we've set without you or I being in the practice, Jared, I think should be the goal of every owner, right? Is to, okay, have I empowered my team? Have I taken myself out of the way so I am no longer the barrier to success for my practice? I'm only a contributor to success for my practice. And, am I good at delegation? Am I honest with myself? Am I honest with my team? Is my team honest with me? Because you go back, all of this starts with honesty, right? And being realistic about expectations, which leads back to honesty. And then you go back to those four things, those four barriers. How can you remove those four barriers? Because those are going to push you into this role of micromanager or dictator, like you were saying, so are the systems in place that are allowing an office to succeed without the owner not there?
Yeah, no, totally. What it does, and I remember that campfire, not just proverbial, but a literal campfire chat that we had that night with Jason and Kip and Brad Smith, and it was one of the more powerful moments for us as dentists too. Just thinking about that, because by doing that, what Jason's saying is you're freeing yourself up. Like you free yourself up to do the things that you want to do. You have this delegate to elevate opportunity to say, these are the things that I don't like. And, and you identify the things that you do like, whether it's the visionary or the integrator or the actual dentistry, whatever it is.
Yep.
You now can focus on that and not just the day-to-day things that you have to do to run practice, because those things have to happen.
Yeah.
And maybe that requires oversight initially. You got your systems in order. There's no question. You can't let it run wild without any sort of oversight and checks. But you don't have to be in that minutia all day, every day. and that allows you, like Jason said, for him, it would free him up to focus. He likes these big, complicated surgery cases that gets him in a state of flow, and by allowing his team members, the staff, other dentists, trusting them to do their job responsibility, allows him to focus on those 2 to 3 hour surgeries without being called out 7 times to talk about, can I make an exception for this, or can we do this or that, right? That's what micromanaging does, is it breaks you away from the things that you really want to do, whatever those tasks are.
Yeah, we didn't even get into like we just got behind the 7 drivers. We didn't even talk about like what's your time worth, right? Like what like where is your time best utilized, all of those things. But I do want to just kind of review some of the things that can combat all this. Again, we talked about it throughout the conversation. One is address your fears, be honest. Be honest with yourself, be honest with your team. Establish clear expectations, not only for your team but for yourself. And have systems and protocols in place that empower your team, right, and allow them to do things. And then we kind of talked about this, but this is a huge thing. Go get some CE. There's a lot of good classes that are out there. We obviously offer quite a few, but go get some good practice management and business CE. And because we weren't taught that, unless you're a business major, or an accounting major, you probably didn't get a whole lot in school, and you're winging it based off what the previous doc did, or, what your buddies are doing, which is, could be okay, depending on who your mentors are, but definitely go and get some CE, because things are changing right now. The landscape of dentistry is completely changing. And if you're motivated by, and you're running off of fear, if that's the emotion that's pushing you through each day, you're going to micromanage. Things are going to come apart. You're going to get freaked out. It's going to be an unhealthy environment. You're going to create a toxic work environment, not only for your employees, but for yourself.
Yeah, and you're going to burn out real fast, and you're going to get tired, and it's going to suck. So
on that note, we should find a way to end every podcast with "it's going to suck."
It's going to suck.
All right, Jared. Good show today. Thanks for making it awesome. If you guys ever have any questions, comments, interests, go to elevationassociation.com at our webpage. We're also on social media. Check us out on Facebook. For those looking for a better way to engage, check out School, Elevation Association on School. A lot of really cool online content there, some forums, some online CE. So, check it out. All right. Any other thoughts before we check out of here?
Just real quick, just some upcoming events. We have a free webinar CE coming up next Tuesday. And then I'm going to be talking about morning routines of high-performing dentists. It's going to go along with this topic a little bit we talked about today. We have a master class course for leadership, 2-day, 16-hour credit course in September. And then we have our annual couple summit trip to Dominica in February, and a few other things. We have our humanitarian trip coming up in October and November as well. So we have a lot of things, a lot of different ways to get involved and to rejuvenate your purpose in your life, and be associated and collaborate with lots of great dentists. So go to our website, check it out. It's all there, elevationassociation.com.
Cool. All right, man. All right. Appreciate it, Jared. We'll see you guys next time.
Okay. See you. Bye.